This week's reject is the 5th chapter of my young adult high fantasy novel, Everwell, the story of Jeff the Boy's lost year. It was rejected by Transatlantic Agency. I submitted the novel to Transatlantic Agency because I knew they had connections to McClelland and Stewart, who have put out some of the best Canadian books of all time. And while I have zero connections to McClelland and Stewart, I did eventually meet one of their authors, Dave Bidini. We were hanging out at the Saskatchewan Festival of Words. We're talking about making art in the cultural wasteland of the Canadian prairies. But he said,
"Well, you make art for yourself. It doesn't matter if anyone ever sees it."
Which I said,
"That's kind of easy for you to say. You write a book, people read it. You put out an album and people listen to it. There's a lot of people here on the outskirts of civilization that create art that never makes its way out of a Word file or a GarageBand session."
He said,
"You got me there."
And then the conversation ended awkwardly. But that's just how I feel about it. I'm a reject, you're a reject. I'm a reject, oh, oh, oh. I'm a reject, you're a reject. I'm a reject, oh, oh, oh. Chapter 5, Explanations. In Everwell, Jeff the Boy was brimming with questions. He was a curious boy under normal circumstances. They had made their way to the heavily wooded area Jeff had been to before. A few steps in, and they would be invisible to Jeff's would-be captors. It was thick with trees both living and fallen. The shrubs and brush were so thick that not even noise escaped. The trees grew both straight up and sideways into a tangled mess. Jeff hopped over a living trunk. He looked over to see where it came out of the earth, but couldn't see the end of it. Like a pipeline, it seemed to go on forever. He looked up. The trees grew from the ground below and the ground above, holding hands in the middle.
"Where am I, Wiel?"
"You stand in Leuchart Woods, the place where all the Smalls live. They will be eager to meet a real first faller."
"No, I meant to say, where is this place, this country, this world?"
"I do not know what a country is, but this place where I live and was born and will die is called Everwell. We live here beneath your world, but not as deep as the core."
"Everwell? Why am I here?"
"You were brought here by the hag."
"Who is she?"
They came to a creek. Large stones jutted from the water. Wiel pointed to the stones, indicating which ones would not roll them into the current.
"The one thing I know about the hag that cannot be denied is she is evil, and we fear her. She is the epitome of wrong. She is death. She craves worship and obedience. If you do not fall into her line, you die."
"Have you ever fallen in line with her?"
"My head has bowed to her many a time, but never my heart."
Wiel continued.
"Her absence brings courage to my words. I have never been brave to her face. My people are not brave."
"How did she bring me here?"
"By the Hall of Levers, my friend. When she sits on her throne, she can see your world through her evil divination. She saw you in your world and used the Hall of Levers to draw you down. She wants to bring down your whole world, but she has been unsuccessful so far. She has been able to bring one of you down a year. The divination takes a toll on her. Do you remember anything from in between our worlds?"
Light bounced from the water and Jeff almost fell from his stone.
"Just falling, closing my eyes and waking here in Everwell."
"I have heard of those who don't wake after coming into Everwell. That's why the hags Kappas are waiting by your side to see if you were in sleep or in death. They won't touch anything dead unless they've killed it."
"Where were they taking me?"
"They were attempting to take you to the hag. If they had succeeded, you would have been thrown to her feet, where she would have told you to worship her or face death. If you did not bow, she would have separated your head from your body."
"And if I did?"
"No one knows. For 100 years, no head from your land has bowed. I suppose that is why we respect you first fallers so much. Year after year, it is said that those from your land have done what I always wished to do, but did not possess the bravery. It has been years since I did a brave thing."
"Saving me was brave."
Wiel paused for a moment, rolling the thought in his mind like one rolls candy on their tongue.
"Yes, I suppose it was."
Wiel searched his mind for what may have been the cause of his new courage. They caught eyes, and Wiel answered honest.
I saw you floating from the sky. I just had to meet you, to welcome you to my home and eat with you. I wanted to know what causes such courage in you boys. The hag hates you boys who have never worshipped her in mind, action, or word. So, year after year, she brings you here. It's her reckless pride.
Do most people look like you? Is everyone in Everwell small?
No, there are many different variations of Everwellians since the day of divorce.
What is that?
That story is an old one. Long ago, in a time that no one alive remembers or even remembers anyone who remembered, we were all the same. We looked the same, talked the same, and acted the same. We were unified and consumed with ourselves. We thought we could do anything. Some still say we could have. We tried to dig our way to the surface of your world, to take it over, but the writer intervened.
The writer?
He is the one that makes all things as they are.
How did the writer stop you?
We transformed. We became on the outside what they were on the inside. My people were small in our own eyes, so we became small. Those who were great in their own eyes became giants, and those who loved darkness in their hearts could no longer dwell in light. We all changed. We lost interest in conquering your world and worked on communicating with each other. We were amazed by the differences in each and celebrated it. We lost our obsession with ourselves. These differences that were meant to draw us together eventually became a reason to hate each other. All we could see were the faults of those around us. We were blind to the goodness in others who were different. The giants hated the smalls hated the kappas, and the kappas hated everyone. Hate was bred and nurtured. It hasn't stopped even to this day.
There was a sense of forlorn in Wiel's voice, and Jeff did not wish to comment on it.
Years ago, when I was a young man, a resistance was brought together of people from all variations. They came together to stop hatred, to destroy it with love, peace, and empathy. All but one member of the resistance were killed. The hag did not like to see a unified world. She was too afraid to be challenged. Fear and hate are still her most powerful weapons.
They walked in silence until Wiel's cottage was not far off.
You will be a guest in my home, a permanent guest if you would like, since you will be in my world the rest of your life.
Jeff stopped his tracks in anger.
You can't make me stay.
Never, Jeffrey. But there is no way to the surface. My whole world united cannot make it so, and these hands cannot either. If I could, I would take you home this moment, and not a second later.
For the first time, Jeff understood his situation. It hit him so hard that he froze. His body shut down, unable to function under the weight of this unbearable truth. His eyes emptied as his brain tried to process what it had just begun to understand. He could no longer hear or see Wiel. He knew he was never going to see the ones he loved again. Wiel carried Jeff the boy the rest of the way and put him in a room of his own. Wiel's house was in the most dense part of the woods. You couldn't see it until you were close to touching it. You may have been thinking that Smalls lived in small houses with small entryways and that they sleep in small beds, but the opposite is true. They build houses as big as bankers with large entryways. They sleep in gigantic beds that could fit a family of Smalls. Wiel's house was a significant size, built from the copious trees of Lukehart Woods. It looked like a log cabin from our world. There were great wooden steps leading up to the door. The inside was simple. The cabin and everything in it was built from trees, the tables, the chairs, the plates, and bowls. The Smalls were woods people through and through. Jeff did not notice any of that. He sat in his room for hours. He fell asleep and woke up and hoped that it was a dream. The reality of the situation hit him again. He tried to cope with the loss of his world. It was not unlike dying. He was where no one else could follow. He cried and mourned for everyone in his world. He held funerals in his imagination for them. They remained alive but were as good as dead to him. He thought about his family and his best friend Britt. He grieved over everyone he knew. Even Lawrence Taves, the glue eater who sat in the back of his class and burped the alphabet at recess. After a day and a half of mourning, Jeff the boy came out of the room. Wiel was talking to his wife. They looked up when he opened the door.
So, you're awake.
Thank you for your offer to let me stay here. I will take it.
He is brave.
Wiel's wife whispered to him.
I just don't want to be alone.
Her name was Nictal. She was short like Wiel. The same long pointy ears poked out from her red hair, but she did not share in Wiel's love for green or facial hair. She wore a white dress.
I'll get you something to eat.
She commented to Jeff.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I'm starving.
Jeff's meal was most intriguing. It looked like lamb chops in the shape of a pop can and red mashed potatoes. It took him a while to understand the tastes that he was savoring. We all sat down at the table with Jeff. Jeff looked to his new friend and cried. Wiel wrapped his stubby arms around his shoulder.
Oh, Jeffrey, your grief won't leave in a day, no matter how brave you are. But you are brave, and today is just the right day to be brave. Today is the day of bravery, son of Jefferson. But before we go to celebrate, I ask you to take the vow of blood with me.